Welcome to Fans of the Forge. Now today we have Season 5, Episode 20, I believe, the Smallsword episode. I'm Chris. To my right we have...
Teresa.
To my left we have...
You have Sean.
And calling in on Skype we have the Forge and Fire champion for this episode, Derek. How's it going, man?
Hey, good. Thanks for having me.
How's it feel? How's it feel to finally be able to say out there that you won this episode?
Oh, man, life has changed. I've got a Maserati now. I'm moving houses tomorrow. It's awesome. It really, more than anything, it's just personally validating for me. That was my main impetus for going on the show, was to challenge myself and see how I would do, and so I felt like I did a good job with that. So on this side of things, it feels really good.
That's great. So as I mentioned before, we'll get right into it, and then feel free to hop in with any comments or whatever you want to say as we go through it here. So
yeah, sure.
Starting off the episode, the other contestants that were here were John, who had 3 years of part-time experience. We had Atsatsa with 10 years of part-time experience. Bob, who had 30 years of full-time experience as a blacksmith, and Derek, who had 17 years part-time experience. Now, if you know the show, you said you're a fan, you would also know that we like to make picks and see who we think is going to win the episode. And It just so happens we all picked the same picks today. We had you as our winner. And
no way.
Yeah, we all chose you as our main pick to win. And the way we do it, we just kind of judge based on, kind of the explanation of your experience and that sort of thing. And we settled on you independently as our winner, and then we chose Atsatsa as our underdog, and we'll see how that plays out as we go here. So for round one, you had to make friction folders using 5160 spring steel, and you were not told what the tests were going to be that you were going to be performed on those blades.
This is correct.
So had you made friction folders before coming on the show?
Actually, I think I was the only guy who had made a friction folder. Oh. And the one that I made was 15 years ago, and it was like this. It was tiny. It was a little bitty pocket friction folder made of antler and a small forge blade, super, super tiny, nothing, like this, nothing big. And so just not to get off the rails too early, but it's really hilarious that before we went on the show, we arrived to the studio, or waiting for day one to walk into the set. Everybody's kind of antsy. And of course we're kind of talking amongst ourselves, well, what do you think it's going to be? What kind of knife do you think we're going to have to make today? And just kind of on the sly, I think it was John says, watch them ask us to make a friction folder. And we all just groaned, and there was a production person with us and they turned around. No, they didn't turn around. They didn't say anything at that point. We just kind of groaned and laughed. And the production person turned around and said, "You guys cut it out. You can't talk about that stuff before the episode. They want all those reactions on the show." And so later in the day, after we had gone through round one and made our blades and we knew what it was, that same person turned around and said, "Did you guys hear anybody on the set say something about friction folder? Did that leak to you guys? Did you have a clue that you were going to do that?" And we were like, "No way." And John said, No, I just remember watching a friction folder episode and just being terrified over it, And so that was pretty funny. None of us wanted to make a friction folder at all.
Oh, I can imagine. It always seems like a very complicated design.
Yeah.
And
I wouldn't want to make one.
No.
No way.
All right. So moving forward here, we have some notes. They made kind of a point to show you and Bob working together at first and kind of talking back and forth. And we've heard mixed comments on whether or not the producers like it when you do that, and some people are told to stop, and some people are like, yeah, just let it go, or if it's not too much. So we noticed that. We always like to note when people are working together. We always like to note that it's a nice community, that these contestants on the show are always more than willing to help somebody else
They
during
just
the
don't
show.
show it.
That's purely what it is. You know, I've been a bladesmith for 17, 18 years now, and on less than one hand, I can count the number of other bladesmiths that I've run into that didn't like to talk shop, didn't like to help each other, or were just jerks. You know, I mean, it's just not something that I've found. Everybody wants to help each other out.
That's good. That's one thing we found out, you know, as we have immersed ourselves into this community, and it's refreshing to see that, because there's so many other types of things out there where it's more of a everyone's at each other's throat sort of thing. So moving forward, another note we had about Bob was that he finished forging his blade with an hour left, and then kind of worked on grinding and kind of getting some of the finishing touches, at least on the blade portion at that point. And then you had your design that it used a curved tang with a twist in there as well, the decorative twist. And you could tell, you know, at least the way they show it on the show, is the judges were like, I don't know about that. And they had some comments for you later on in the judging about that. But the one thing they did note was that you didn't quench the tang, specifically so that it would be a little more malleable, maybe not as brittle as the rest of the blade could be during a heat treating process.
Right. I had in mind that I might try to take that curve out. I wasn't even thinking about the tab being bent one way or the other. I was just thinking that I eventually may want to make that straight and not curved. And so that's why I left that, or tried to leave it soft, you know.
Yep. And then we had John. The one note we had for John was he dropped his blade into the oil tank and then had to go fishing to get it out, which must stink to have to go, you know, arm deep in the oil tank. But he did it. He got it out and continued on.
Yeah, he's a trooper.
Yeah. And then we had Atsatsa, who was a very interesting guy. One note we had was that they used the only one they showed cutting his steel to a smaller piece before heating it up to try to straighten it out or anything. And again, sometimes it's hard to tell if that was the only person to do that, or I think they may have
the only one that they showed doing that.
or the only one they showed actually.
Yeah, I wound up cutting steel off of mine later on. Initially, I used the bar as a handle for a little while, and then I actually modified a set of tongs on the show. I grabbed a set of tongs off the wall and beat it into shape around the bar to hold it better. They do allow you to modify the tongs there, and so I did that, and then I eventually wound up cutting almost half of that bar off. That was a lot of steel.
Yeah, that was a lot. That was a lot, especially for what you need to make there. So Atsatsa, he spent a lot of time visualizing the blade, what he wanted to see this blade become, which I'm sure everybody does a version of that during the design time, that sort of thing. They really wanted to really push the, what's the word that I'm going
spiritual?
Spiritual aspect that Atsatsa brought to the show.
Cultural. Yeah, the cultural side. Sure.
And we also noted a few quotes. Specifically, steel has a spirit, which he's not the first one to say that. I've heard that multiple times from different guys on the show. But the one that was really an interesting one, a keeper quote, if I had to say so myself, was, "When the steel takes on the color of the sunset, that's when it's ready to receive its soul."
I love that. I thought it was great.
It's
I thought
beautiful.
It was fantastic.
Very poetic.
I mean, if you look up Atsatsa online, you know, he has a website. I think it's Red Crow, and he does some really cool, culturally inspired knives. They're beautiful, you know. And so, and he brought that with him to the show. I didn't get to see or hear any of that in round one, because me and Bob were at anvils 4 and 3, and John was at 2, and Atsatsa was at 1. And so, just like we can't hear what the judges are saying at all because of the noise, I really couldn't see. I didn't know that John had dropped his blade in the oil. I mean, I didn't even know that was a thing. I saw oil all over him later in the day. I was like, dude, what happened? Did you go swimming in the oil or what? But but yeah, so my world was just basically me and Bob during round one, so I didn't see any of that. But that quote was fantastic.
It was great. It was absolutely great. So moving on to judging. John, the comment for him was that he had a very tiny pivot hole that would need to be expanded if he was going to make that into a functional friction folder. And again, the judges were concerned about your curved tang for a friction folder design, but they said that, you might be able to work it out. I think they seemed very interested to see where you were going to go with that and see if you could make it work.
Yeah, honestly, I was too at that point. I at one point I just decided I'm going to go with this, and if I get into round two and it's just giving me a massive headache, then I'll try to grab a torch or something and straighten it.
Yeah. And then Bob, when he was asked to bring his up to the judges, he did a little bit of a jig while he was walking up. And I actually was, as I go through and record these episodes and I put up the little clips behind us, I take screenshots and things like that. And I took a screenshot of that moment because that was the only shot in the entire episode where the four of you stand next to each other on screen all at the same time.
Oh, yeah.
And he's mid-jig in the screenshot, and you're looking over at him like, what in the heck?
That's Bob, man. He was just a happy guy, the whole time. He was super fun.
Yeah. And the judges said that they were his tang alignment was a little weird, a little off. And then for Atsatsa, the ricasso tapered down like the rest of the blade, and the big issue there was that there wouldn't be enough material there to provide the friction when folding the blade.
That's right. Yeah, it was kind of angled like that, and your scales are going to be like this on either side of it, so it's just gonna float.
Right. So unfortunately, Atsatsa ended up getting booted off because of that issue, because that would be the hardest thing to recover from in round two to try to get that thing up and running.
Yeah.
So you moved on to round two, as well as John and Bob. And who's doing round two? You're Teresa. Take it away.
So round two is where we add the handles. Well, not we, you, and your guys. So Sean, I can't read your handwriting. Add the handles, friction only.
No mechanical devices.
Okay, no mechanical devices.
Let me add one thing if you don't mind.
Sure.
One thing that I did, I think I've watched the show 3 times. I'm a big narcissist now, but I didn't notice until someone else pointed it out today. They didn't detail our parameters in round one at all.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, but we had parameters. We definitely had parameters, and we had length parameters, and we had overall length parameters. And then we had parameters for the handle material. But I think our blades had to be overall no longer than 22 end to end, and a certain length from the ricasso to the tip.
Okay.
And I went home between round 1 and 2. I was terrified that I had blown a parameter, and because I had written some marks on the anvil for a personal limitation of 20 inches so that I didn't blow the 22,
Yeah.
And I went slightly over that 20 and just freaked out all night over it. But they didn't talk about our parameters at all. I thought that was interesting.
Yeah.
It might have been a time thing. They can only fit so much in. Yeah.
Right.
That is interesting that they didn't do that, because especially when they say they don't tell you what the test is going to be, and then they don't give to us any parameters. You're like, how do they know how to make this size? So when they began round 2 and they're talking about the kind of sort of parameters, Doug did a little whoop whoop, raise the roof thing.
Yeah, he raised the roof.
Yeah, I got a whoop whoop from Doug.
Yeah.
And John had a tiny pin to go into the tiny hole. So rather than fixing the size of the hole, he opted to go with a pin that would fit in the hole that existed. And we'll see that
How that
holds
played
for
out.
him. You had a tab on your tang that wasn't quite lining up. Put it in the vise to try to work that out, and really just knocked it off. But it seemed to have worked out for you better anyway. So yay!
It did. Yeah, it did. I had put a pin through the middle of the handle material, and that pin had a metal tube actually that was, so the pin goes through one side of the handle material into a tube and then through the other side, and so the tube kept the pieces of handle material from collapsing.
Okay.
because otherwise, if I just had a pin through, then the handle material could just squish down. And so that pin with the tube on it, I placed it so that the tang rested right on top of it. So my original idea with that tab was to have two methods to positively lock the tang to the back, so it'd be really secure in case they beat on something. You know, the knife wouldn't try to spin through. You know, and so when the tab broke off, it just rested on that pin and wound up working to my favor. You know, I mean, because it flush mounted in the handle at that point.
Right.
Lucky.
Yeah, it worked out.
And Bob didn't get a whole lot of airtime in round 2.
Which usually is a good thing.
Yeah, he did.
He was just kind of doing his own thing. So then we move on to the testing, where the strength test was where Jay Nielsen took your knives and he beat on a bolt with a baton 3 times. So you had minor edge damage and a little bit of a shift in the blade. Bob's handle broke apart. I guess he only had epoxy in there, and it just kind of, it's split it open.
I was really, like, we were all like, whoa, but then it turned out to not be as big a deal as they went through it.
I think in any other knife, that would have been a big deal, but with a friction folder, you know, you're holding it tight. So it was okay.
And then John ended up cutting Jay's hand because of that sharp tang coming through and that tiny pivot, you know, the pivot pin shifted. So, I mean, as soon as we saw blood, we were like,
if there's any judge that you don't want his hand to be cut, it's Jay Nielsen.
Yeah, really. I mean, he came out, this little behind the scenes thing, you know, before we walked on the set, they keep us off the set while they're setting up for the test. They do not let you see what your knives are, especially us. We had no idea what the test was going to be. And they did not let us have an inkling about what the strength test was going to be. And so they held us out while they set up the stage and put the barrels out and the bolts and all. And so we walk in and get set on our marks and we wait. And then Jay Nielsen is just standing there and he's hiding this bat. We can't see it. You know? we could kind of see what's on the barrels, but we can't really tell what exactly is going to go on. And then he whips that bat out and it's just this look of glee on his face. He's just so happy that he's getting to wreck some knives, you know?
Yep.
And then move on to the sharpness test was a ham slice. Yours will cut, and so will Bob's. It was sharp, had a poor handle, which you kind of already knew. And John was sharp, lost the friction aspect of it, just kind of swung. And so that was a bigger problem than the handle issue, and John was booted.
And I think we skipped something here. There was a very good portion where Will Willis had some great alliteration with fully functional friction folders.
So that the judges and I can focus on the finer features of your Forged and Fire fully functional friction folders and ask you to please step off the forge floor.
In the forge, or please leave the forge. We captured it on tape with closed captioning, posted that. I think I saw about 4 other people do the same thing, put the closed captioning on and record it and put it up on Facebook.
Well, at some point you said the Forged and Fire fully frictional, whatever.
Oh, yeah.
We can't do it.
And look, he said it like twice, I think, in the show, different places. And one of the times, and he just nailed it, just, and the second time it was like, let's retake just a little bit, but yeah, one time he just nailed it.
Well, he is a professional.
Yes, he is.
Was it during that test where Doug and Will were kind of like wincing? Or was that that was round 3?
That's the strength test for round 3. Yeah. So Sean, why don't you bring us into round 3 here?
So round 3, you guys are tasked with making a small sword, which is
the hot rod
of swords, 18th century French sword that had fashion and function. It evolved from the rapier, and it had a triangular shaped blade and a decorative hilt. And Arya Stark in Game of Thrones uses a small sword. The specs were that the handle had to have a knuckle bow, arms, and a rear quillion and pommel. And it had to be 30 to 32 inches in length, trifolared, double-edged, tapered to a needle point.
Right.
So,
and there was one other parameter. It wasn't a required parameter, but Dave Baker told us this, and it was written on our parameter sheet. But the suggested weight was 1.5 pounds.
Wow.
Oh, wow.
That wasn't a requirement. But before we left, we got to meet with Dave Baker, and we don't get to see his weapon. We don't get to ask questions about how to make one. He just basically says, this is what a small sword is. These are the parts that you're responsible for. And he emphasized, he was like, guys, a small sword is supposed to be light. Don't bring me a big, club.
Oh yeah.
And so it was very much in my mind in the build to try to meet that suggested parameter of the weight of 1.5 pounds. And I think I came in at 1 pound, 1.5 pounds, or 1 ounce over 1.5 pounds. So 1 pound, 9 ounces, I think is what I came in at. So and Bob was right there too.
When you see the sword on a table, are you allowed to examine it at all?
Nope.
Wow. Okay.
No, I don't think I don't think I'm revealing anything, that's not supposed to be said, but they pull the cover off,
right? Yep.
And you get to look at it there, and that's it. We can't touchy feely, we can't look at it. They let us look at it about that long, okay. And then they tell us, you guys got to go make one.
Wow.
So
at your shop, did you, knowing that weight parameter, did you weigh out your steel at all, or just kind of
constantly?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I started with a pretty long bar of 5160, and I drew out a pattern on the floor for the length of the sword, so that I would know I would meet parameter length. And so as I'm forging the sword into profile, I would lay it on the floor next to that guide. And as I got close to that parameter, I started cutting steel off. So that I wound up cutting steel off so that I knew I had enough to stretch out for the tang. And then I cut even more off of that. And then as I went through the build process, I was weighing everything. I mean, I would take the pommel and the grip pieces and the guard part and lay the blade down on a scale and weigh the whole thing all at one time. And I was like, oh, it's just too heavy, but.
Wow. Well, during the, at least during the show, it just showed you kind of cruising along. It didn't really show you having any issues. But Bob, he decided to go for a 68 layer Damascus, twist Damascus for his blade.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
And for his handle and guard material. But, he also made a 5160 backup. And while he's kind of forging out his blade, he notices cracks in his Damascus. So he ditches it, goes for his backup blade, and then it had like a warp, and then so he's trying to straighten it, and then it breaks on day 4. So he's got to start all over again, and then it cuts to you guys back in the studio. So yeah, that's kind of rough to go through breaking or two blades.
I really felt bad for Bob. He struggled a lot. I mean, I had some struggles, but nothing like that. And I think the reason my minor struggles weren't shown is that they just, compared to what Bob went through, they just weren't anything. I'm hoping in the Cutting Deeper episode next week that there'll be a little bit more of the home portion. I had to remake my guard pieces at least one time. I remade the handle twice, and I struggled with wrought iron, keeping it from cracking while I was forging it. But these were things that I overcame fairly quickly. So, Bob, it broke my heart when I found out that he had that struggle.
Yeah. So, you guys brought in for the kill test, which is Doug going at a ballistics dummy. You guys both did well with that. No issues there. Then it moves on to the strength test, which is Jay Nielsen sticking your sword in a block of wood and then bending it 45 degrees both directions.
So nerve-wracking.
I've seen that
let me tell you,
once before on the show, and it's wild.
Oh yeah, I went back and watched that episode like a couple days ago just to kind of see how they reacted back then, and I think they went to 35 degrees or 30 degrees or something. They didn't go all to 45, but you could have heard a pin drop in the entire studio. I mean, the camera people, the lighting people, everybody was just glued, and at one point I was bent over, doubled over with my hands on my knees, just yeah. I couldn't watch, and it was rough.
That's probably the one you're remembering where.
Oh yeah.
They're cringing. The judges are cringing and like.
Oh yeah.
Doug and Will were just like, hiding behind their hands. And then it's Bob's turn. You did well. Your blade made it, and Bob's turn, and his unfortunately took a bend during that test, but they let him keep going because it didn't break. So then it moved on to the sharpness test, which was a Sandman harassing, if you will.
Yeah.
So you did overall pretty well. Dave made a point that your handle was kind of rotating, so that was a little difficult for him.
It was just I actually fixed that when I was standing there at the final judgment. I tightened the nut and it stopped rotating. And I was like, see, it wasn't that big of a deal.
And then Bob, still had a sharp blade, but it was bent, and Dave had some issues. Just kind of, I think he missed the sandbag a couple of times with that. Mm-hmm. So
yeah, he actually hit the floor on the second miss.
Oh
wow!
And you could hear it hit the concrete.
Mm-hmm. And overall, that's it. Derek wins.
Woo!
Bob gets the boot.
And we all got points.
Yay, points for everybody.
Congratulations. So let me ask you this. What do you guys get at the end of all this? I mean, are you guys doing something at the end of the season to
we never actually settled
determine
on
a winner?
Well, we kind of just settled on it last week.
Yeah. Well, we never talked to Sean about it, or did we?
I just asked earlier if you mentioned it, and you said yes.
Oh, I thought I did.
Did you?
So there's a brewery not far from us that is also within walking distance to the Dragon's Breath Forge, which, as you may know,
yeah, those guys.
Yeah, they're all very close to us. So we were thinking about whoever wins will get a couple brews treated to them at the brewery there, not so far from that forge, and see how that goes.
I did not know about this.
Oh well, now you know.
But I don't care because I like beers. So that's great.
So
you guys are in Connecticut, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, you're not. You. I don't know that you're far. I was
pretty much nothing's far.
Just south of New York in Connecticut when we filmed there. So
yeah. So they film in Stamford now, which is about 40-minute drive from where we are, but not too bad.
Yeah. Right.
But so that being said, you're the winner. Did your check clear? Did you get your 10,000 now that the show aired?
Not yet.
Oh.
Yeah. I think it takes a few days.
Yeah, of course.
It's just been a couple days.
Do you have plans for that 10,000?
Well, not really. Maserati? To be honest with you, I think I'm just gonna. Yeah, the Maserati. It's got to do 185. We'll probably just put that money back. There's one tool for the shop that I really want, and I haven't decided on whether or not to buy it or build it. And I've got nearly everything in here but a hydraulic press, so I want to add a press to the shop. I've got a fly press, which is basically an old 100-year-old version of a hydraulic press that you rotational mass presses down, and then I've got a treadle hammer and the power hammer right there, a 33-pound. And so, I mean, there's not much I can't do, but a hydraulic press just speeds that process, tenfold. So that's kind of what I'm looking at, but I just haven't made my mind up yet.
Nice.
Cool. Great. Well, that's the episode. Derek, thank you for calling in and discussing.
Oh, you bet. Thanks for having me. I really appreciate it. I mean, like I said, I'm a big fan, and I just want to say this. Like 6 months ago, I was waiting to go film, and I was dying to start a fan podcast for the show. I was just dying, but I was like, what are the legal ramifications of a potential contestant starting a podcast? I was just like, I went back and forth, but you guys are just killing it. You're doing so much better than I would have done. So
hey, thank you.
I appreciate it.
We appreciate the nice words, and Hey, thanks again for contacting me and helping set this up with us. And
yeah, anytime.
We'd love to chat with you again soon. Maybe do a better, more in-depth interview with you to talk a little bit more about your background. But for now, we're going to wrap up this episode. So everybody, thank you for watching Season 5, Episode 20, Smallsword Wrap-Up featuring Derek Melton as our Forge and Fire champion. Remember to subscribe to our channel and check us out on Instagram, as well as Derek on Instagram. I believe, are you at Derek Melton on Instagram?
Yep, just Derek Melton, DerekMelton.
And then also watch his website, because I saw you posted that you're going to be posting on your website more photos and more in-depth discussion about things from when you were building the Smallsword for the show. So there's going to be some great information up there, I'm sure. And that's that. Thanks, everybody, for watching.
Thanks. Appreciate it.
Your weapon will kill. Your weapon will kill. Your weapon will kill. Your weapon will kill. Will kill.